Hello, my name is Martha Olivia Shayesteh. There are so many aspects. I am Mexican descent. My parents were both from Mexico. They were from the state of Chihuahua, which is the largest state in the country of Mexico. And I love the unity of family, the respect for your elders, the music. There's so much variety, the food, um, so many beautiful places to visit. But most of all is the family orientation and the unity of the culture that I truly love and admire. Yes, there's good and bad in every culture and every nationality, always. There's no exceptions to the rule. And there are many times that I really dislike some of the Hispanic culture, some of the, not necessarily the culture, because it's not the culture, but it's some of the Hispanic, maybe youth that maybe are not, they don't behave as much. They think that in order to become adversity in life or racism, you have to fight it with violence. And I'm totally in disagreement with that. I think you fight it by educating yourself and being a good role model for other folks that are in your same nationality. You have to set an example, because I think every person, no matter what nationality, is an ambassador of their country in other countries. Wherever they go, you're still going to be I'm still going to be a Mexican nationality, Mexican descent, even though I've been in the United States most of my life. I'm still going to be my culture, my heritage, Mexican descent. And no matter what part of the world I am, I need to represent that. And so when I see some of folks that are Hispanics or Mexican descent not behaving properly in the system, then that upsets me, because it doesn't represent everyone. I consider myself to be a good citizen, and I take pride in, first of all, taking care of my family and being able to um, help other folks when needed as often as possible. Love thy neighbor kind of a thing. I don't, like to have a good relationship with my neighbors, and I think respect and overall, I try to be a good citizen. Um, well, as when I was growing up, I had a really happy childhood with my parents, with my family. I miss that. Sometimes I wish I could be a little kid again. And I think one of my fears, when my parents moved into the United States, I was approximately 5 years old. And entering the school when I did not speak the language was difficult. So one of my fears was being able to communicate and learn how to speak English, because I thought people would make fun of me, and so I was a little shy at times. Um, Throughout how I overcame that, um, I think it's just practice makes perfect. I was in a good school system, so I have to give credit to my teachers. Also, my parents always encouraged me to not be afraid and to do my best, and to do my best in a good, positive way. Um, Overcoming the language barrier, I think, was more difficult. When I was in fifth grade, My parents moved from uh, Texas to California. When I enter middle school, my teachers were awesome, and but I noticed that I was not placed in the ESL class, so for English as a special language. Uh, and so I went to speak to my counselor, whom I still remember to this day because he inspired me to do better. And I went to speak to him in the office, and I was a little upset. And when I went to the office, he said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Well, I think I was a little bit not rude, but maybe a little bit upset." And I said, "Well, I want to know why I don't have my ESL class. I have all these classes, and they're good." He said, "You don't like your class?" And I do. I said, "I like them." And he said, "Well, you have your English class, and in your English class, you are doing spelling bee competitions." And one of the things that I'm proud of is that even though I consider myself not a very good English speaker at that time, um, I was participant in a group for the competition of the spelling bee competition. And I was one of the top students in those competitions. And he said, "Weren't you proud of yourself? You're doing so good in there." And I said, "Well, yes, but that's nothing to do with me not having my ESL class. I need that because I don't speak good English." And he said to me, he asked me, "Okay, and what language do you think you're arguing with me in?" And it totally threw me off. I was silent. I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. I was totally speechless. And he saw my reaction, and he said, "Okay, my dear, why don't you go through your classes right now, and if you have any further questions, come back to me." I never went back to him to ask him again. So at that point, it kind of I asked myself, when did I learn English? At what time? It was, and so from then on, I was in regular classes, still, working in my English. And my parents were really good because they always helped me to be the best. But also, my parents taught me how to read and write in Spanish at home. So I think that helped me as well. And so that was a really good experience, yeah, memorable one. Yes, he was because um, this counselor, I believe his name is Mr. Higgins, was strict, firm, but gentle. And the way that he communicated with the students, um, I admire his way of communication. I noticed that he would get his message across in a stern way, but not being angry or scolding the students. He got his message across, and students respected him, and I admire that in him. I think because my parents always taught me they had to be strong, and I think that my first experience was in high school when I joined the cheerleading. No, not the cheerleading team, the drill team. And in the school where I was going, there was a very low percentage of Hispanics. There was one student that was African American, and the majority percentage there were other nationalities, but the majority was the uh, white Anglo-Saxon American, if you can say that. So when I joined the drill team, I had looked forward so much to joining the team, and I passed the test. But we were approximately 48, 50 girls, And out of those girls, there was only two of us that were Hispanics. And so I noticed that sometimes not everyone, not all the girls would want to relate to us or will exclude us from certain groups or not invite us to parties or gatherings. And I felt that it was because we were Hispanics or Mexicans. However, you know, sometimes I would come home and relay that concern, or I would cry and tell my parents. And, my dad will always say, don't worry about it. Just you do your best. So I was determined to do my best. And we had a role, and when we would do formation lines, we had approximately four rows and or four columns or girls, and then we had rows, maybe about 10 or so, because we were about 50 girls or so. And each row had a person in charge of that row to make sure that everyone in that row of girls, maybe five or six of us, will learn the team. And so they had one person in charge, and I was in charge of my row. So I always push my row to be the best and to look proud, and wear that uniform really proud. So I always got a lot of recognition for that. And I think that was my overcoming that. It's like, okay, you're trying to make me feel less? Well, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do better. I think one encounter was um, my husband and I were traveling into here in California, and we were taking like a weekend vacation and along the coast. We went into a real fancy restaurant, and it was overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful. Um, and I know they took a long time. When we arrived, we didn't have reservations, but we wrote our name, and they asked us to wait. And so we noticed that there were folks that came behind us afterwards, and they put their name down. Also in couples, because there were or a number of twos. And I noticed that they would call their name, but they would not call our name. So the I noticed that the host that was um, um, greeting the customers as they were coming in, she was very nice with the people that were coming in, but yet, and she would communicate to the other people that were waiting next to us, oh, we're going to have a table for you soon. We're going to have however, she would not communicate with us. And so, I noticed why, and I asked my husband, did you notice? And my husband said, I did. She's not being attentive to us or even acknowledging that we're here. And so I got up and I went to ask her, excuse me, do you know how much longer it's going to be before we are seated? And she said, well, it's going to be a little while, so please have a seat. But she was stern in her voice. But yet the other folks came in, and they were most of the folks that came in were the typical white looking American person. And her treatment to them was totally different than what she was treating us. So I really felt that she was totally ignoring us because of she didn't say it, but I could feel it. I mean, I'm old enough to kind of tell. And my husband was upset. And at that time, we asked to speak with the manager. The manager was pleasant, and we explained, we the situation, and they apologized. And they said, "Oh no, we're going to have a table for you right away." He said, I apologize. We'll take care of this right away." But by that point, I felt really bad, and I felt so was difficult to describe how I was feeling because I was so upset by that situation. I really felt that she was actually being mean in not acknowledging that we were there and acknowledging everyone else. So we decided to leave. But that was a bad experience um, that I've encountered on a personal basis.
If you were
Well, I think I probably would not have been as nice. I probably would have maybe spoken out louder or make it known how upset I was. But I think at my age, it comes with a maturity that it was not going to resolve anything. We did express, I gave her a little piece of my mind and I told her how rude she was in a polite way, how rude she was. And then I felt that she discriminated against and that we could escalate the situation and bring our lawyers. I said, however, you know, I don't have time for you. So, you know, and this was after we spoke with the manager, and she was just totally, you know, uh, silent. But I don't think she really cared. But I said, but I still spoke my mind. But I think if I would have been younger, I probably would have maybe make a scene or not dealt with it as politely or in an educated manner. But I'm glad I behaved myself that time. You need to step back a little when you are angry or upset of the surroundings, what the situation is. Step back a little bit and think, what is you have to be the bigger person always. The bigger person. Uh, the bigger person in a positive way. You have to think, am I going to get in trouble by this? You don't want to get arrested. Do this in a smart way. What are my resources to take care of this? Who do I go to? Do I go to the manager? Do I report this? Um, Try, because if you make a scene, they call the police. If you get arrested, how is that going to resolve the situation? On the contrary, it made it worse. So my advice is to step back a little, analyze the situations. How can I make it better? How can I contribute in a positive way to this situation? Uh, you know, Racism has always existed and I think will always exist. Unfortunately, each person is their own world, their own mind, and sometimes um, there are folks that have a one-way vision. You know, they don't expand. You know, they don't want to meet other nationalities, learn about nationalities. I think it's important to learn a little bit of other cultures. You're not going to be less of your own culture by respecting and learning about other cultures, their delicious foods, their delicious traditions, beautiful traditions, and learn and absorb the best. The way that I think it race because many nationalities, many folks in different nationalities have come a long way. You see them in different positions in education, in the government, which is great. However, um, I think the last few years, because of different government folks, I think it has regressed. The time of improving racism has gone back. I'm thinking decades and maybe 10 years or so, because unfortunately, our government folks have a responsibility of uniting the folks, the different nationalities. And sadly, um, some of the politicians have not done that. I think because they have a voice and people can hear them, they're expressing their own voice, and then there's people who follow that. So it has disunited some of the folks. So I think we have come back some, sadly. Well, like I mentioned a little while ago, I try to be the bigger person. So I think it has not affected me as much because I try to be in control of my own emotions. It takes time and maturity to do that. You never stop learning, never. You need to continue learning and improving yourself. But I think when I see that that is happening, against me, then I try to speak up more. Speak up in a positive way. You know, how is this going to affect me? Is it affecting my family? Is it affecting my community? And speak up. So I think it's made me stronger as a person, of as a Hispanic person, a Mexican person. It made me strong. I don't really feel that it's affecting me as personally too much, but I do see how it affects my Hispanic um, folks or even other nationalities. And so it affects me emotionally because I feel sad for those folks. Um, and you cannot just look away. Yeah, it affects you in that way.